Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. If it's your first time here, welcome. My name is Wilkins. I am a priestess and I teach about the ancient feminine through as an author, as a mentor, and as a digital course creator. So I hope you subscribe to the channel if you want more in that energy. Welcome back if you're coming back again. So today we're going to talk about something that's a gold mine for us to tap into in terms of our growth that I think a lot of people are missing and not paying attention to. And we're going to talk about the trauma responses that are coming up in relation to what we're watching online, what we are watching happening in Palestine, which is a genocide. And many of us have been watching this since October. Many people have known about this from before October, but a lot of us are just learned about it then, right? And now we're catching up on all of this. And what is available for us is such an opportunity in shadow work that many people are glazing over. And what we can see is that every single one of us, our trauma response is coming up in some way in relation to this because it is so intense. The types of images and visuals we're seeing on a daily basis for 8 months is not a normal thing for our nervous system. And then in addition to that, how we are witnessing our governments respond to this sort of thing, how they are leading in this sort of situation, how dishonest they are being, how much gaslighting is going on. Like, it's a lot to take in. And so with all of this, there is a huge response that is happening for each of us. For me, I'm noticing that it comes up after I see really horrible something like new that has happened that's like somehow way worse than the last thing that's happened. Like, it just keeps getting worse. And so for myself, I'm witnessing this trauma response come up, which I'll talk about in a minute. But what we need to look at is that this trauma response is our go-to. It's our go-to in any traumatic situation we experience. Whenever we experience inconvenience or dis-ease in some way, whenever something troubles us, this is our go-to. This isn't surface level work. This is the deeply entrenched patterns that we have formed, that this is our trauma response for most everything in our life. So if we can address it, it's showing itself clearly to you. Like, there's no way that you can miss it. It's showing itself clearly. So if we can address that, it's like we just have such a gift of being able to do healing in lots of other areas of our life. It simply requires that you pay attention to a genocide, which I don't think is asking too much. A lot of people do. And those aren't the type of people I want to surround myself with. And if you're watching this at this point, you probably have been paying attention to this. So thank you for being aware and being a person who cares about humanity, trying to be nice. So what I want to talk about are some of the different trauma responses we have. I'm going to talk about mine first. And the thing is, there's nothing to be embarrassed about with your trauma response because we all have it. Okay, nobody doesn't have this. Everyone has a trauma response. And the only thing to be embarrassed about is when you're unwilling to look at it. So for me, I would love to hear which of these aligns with you in the comments. This is going to allow all of us watching this to feel much more like safe to talk about this aspect of things, because I think that a lot of leaders for a long time have led from like a throne, right? Have led from this, I'm better than you. I'm different from you in some way. And I refuse to do that. Like, I am a normal person. Not that anyone thinks that I'm like, but a lot of my clients have told me, like, we appreciate how you don't set yourself apart. And I think more leaders need to do this, right? In any of the courses I create, I do the course with the students because I'm always willing to learn, because all of us are on the same level, even if we might be in different moments of our consciousness or different levels of our expansion. None of us are better than others, right? So please share which of these in the comments aligns with you. So my trauma response we'll talk about first is the tendency to attack. So for me, like I've always been a back talker, right? I'm always witty in the way that I speak with people. But if I get really upset, I will criticize, or I will just be critical of people in general, whether that's like to their face or not, right? So for me, with what's happening in Gaza, my trauma response like kicks in so hard when I see something horrific that has happened. I will instantly go to blame the people that I feel like they aren't doing a good enough job to stop whatever is happening. So in this case, it's not individual people, but it's groups of people who are silent. But of course, I think about people I know who haven't said anything that I'm disappointed in, but it's really groups of people. So for me, like one of the ways that I will try to cope with the immense rage and grief is trying to hold someone accountable for it. And so then I will go in and think like just mean thoughts will flood my mind about, people who are leaders, people who are mothers, people who I just deem aren't doing their job, which some of that like might have validity. However, the way that it chooses to express through me is not the most effective use of my Shakti. Because that's ultimately what it is. It's this like really fierce feminine energy that comes up. However, it's channeled in a way that doesn't like no one can really hear my message in it, or the people that I want to hear the message can't hear it because I'm attacking them, right? This has been a consistent theme for the last 8 months. It's a theme when I find things online. It's a theme when I'm with people in person. And I'm noticing because I have addressed it, it does get better each time, but it's like it feels tiny. But we have to remember that these trauma responses are the deeply ingrained ones. They are trenched in, right? It's like the couch that's been sitting on carpet and there's a huge dent. Like it's going to take some time for the carpet to come fully back up and for no one can see the dent, right? That dent's going to be there for a little bit. So some of the other trauma responses, the first one we could talk about is the one who's attacking. This could be from repressed rage, from repressed grief, from an inability to channel it in a way that's actually productive. It's in a way that is creating separation from you and someone else. It's in a way that is creating harm because you are creating damage to other people. You could say the exact same message to someone. I'm like basically speaking to myself here. You could say the exact same message to someone in a way that they would be able to receive. And so it's sort of this like immaturity and communication skills that you will go to attack before you will go to express in a way that can be heard. And all of our traumatic responses are learned, right? I learned this behavior from my entire family line. This isn't like, didn't come out of nowhere, right? So some of the other trauma responses, the first one that a lot of the others are rooted in is avoidance. So this could be because you physically are disassociating. This is a huge thing where it's like, feels so scary to actually be able to go in and witness what's happening, to see and to like face the feelings of the immense pain that is happening, that someone would rather just completely avoid it, which could be like living in ignorance, like, oh, I haven't heard anything about that, but it's like a decision to not look, right? It's a decision to turn your head away from it. It could be that you witness it, but you're disassociating, so you're not really like even there when you're experiencing it. Also, some of this could just be immaturity or like a form of privilege, a form of ignorance, essentially. This is also just flat out denial and pretending that something's not happening, right? So if this is your traditional trauma response, what you're going to want to look at is, what else am I pretending about in my life? Right? This is not a siloed area that this is showing up in. Avoidance is probably your natural go-to whenever you're uncomfortable, whenever you're afraid, right? So understanding that by not going into that, you are not even accessing so much of your power. You are not even letting yourself venture into a space where you really can be powerful. So first facing the fear of like, I can handle whatever it is that comes my way. I know that I have the tools. I know that I have the support system. I know that I can figure it out and I can handle it. Even if it's really hard, I'm gonna choose to face the fear. I think that that's really the movement for the person with this trauma response. And the question is, do you want to be in your power or do you want to circle around it? So by looking at this trauma response, you can regain and reclaim so much of your power. Um, and the thing that I want to say about this, like, I wasn't going to say this, but I just feel like it's important. People can feel that you're not in your power when you're not. And it's not from a judgmental space. It's just like you can feel when someone is rooted in their power, like you're like not really gonna fuck with them, you know? You just have a sense of that. So I want to just say other people are also witnessing this, not in a way to like bring in judgment or something like that, but just like you get to be in your power, face the fear, step into it. The next trauma response that shows up, this one is so common, love and light. It's actually a form of the avoidance pattern. This is one that a lot of the spiritual industry is using, the yoga communities are using. This is absolute spiritual bypassing. This is an excuse that is claiming essentially to bring love to the situation, but it's again skirting around the actual situation. People who are saying, let's bring love and light, don't usually know anything about what's actually like the details of what's happening. And it's like, if you have a child who's being bullied at school, or if your child is bullying someone else, you are not going to be like, you know what, let me just send love and light to both of them. I know that that's going to impact this more than my words could. I don't want to create any harm. So I'm just going to send love and light. No, you correct the child's behavior who is bullying. You address it because that is actually what love is, to show them what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable behavior. And that's easy to point out in terms of human rights, right? It's easy to point out in terms of cruelty. Oh, if we can hold that energy toward a child with bullying, it's really no different in a situation of genocide, right? So the question here is actually, where else am I enabling poor behavior and calling it love? This is a big one, right? That's a big question. I know a lot of people in the spiritual industry who, people who are yoga teachers, people who are spiritual practitioners, people who are priestesses, like all sorts of people that have used this excuse with me. And what I also see in this energy is that, and also when I used to do this, like I never was really like a big love and light person. I've always been like a ravenous dragoness. But like there are times in my own life when I have love and lighted situations that deserved wrath, that deserved the dark goddess, that I was enabling someone's poor behavior because I wasn't willing to face the repercussions that would happen when I addressed it. It's like when people have a child who's like a drug addict, you can't just love and light that shit either. You have to address it. And sometimes that means, no, you can't live with me anymore. It means, no, I won't let you borrow money anymore because I don't trust what you're going to do with it, right? There are certain situations where we are enabling, and there is a requirement for tough love for that person to actually like learn, for that person to actually evolve. And it's no different in this situation. So if that is the trauma response you're using, ask yourself, where else in my life am I enabling poor behavior from others and calling it love? The next very popular trauma response is people saying, this isn't my lane. This isn't my, like, sometimes this is said with the energy of like, I'm just not the authority on this. I'm not educated on this. A huge aspect of that portion of it is because if you're in my generation, you grew up with parents and with older generations steering you away from talking about politics. Talking about politics in my family is like not acceptable. People will straight shut you down if you try to talk about politics at a dinner table, and this is extraordinarily harmful for for our generation and moving forward, the people who have to deal with the repercussions that politicians have created, like the situations politicians have created. So a part of this is the belief system that it's not my place to talk about politics, because we've been programmed that way. And look at the disastrous results that have come from us being unwilling to talk, that it's not our place, that it's not our lane, that we aren't the educated authority. It's very easy to get educated. It's very easy to become informed about what's going on. Politicians are not any smarter than you are. Many of them, I would argue, are much dumber. Like, they're not any higher than you. They're not any more, they don't have any more expertise than you. They might be specialized in something particular, but you can also study it. You can also get educated, and it doesn't have to involve that much. To be honest, you don't need to go get a degree in something to get educated in it. So that's where one lane of this, I think, comes from. This isn't my lane. The other lane is an absolute excuse. It's an easy way to say, like, hey, you know, I only talk about yoga here on my page. I only talk about dentistry on my page. Trust that you can form a genocide, you can bring that conversation into literally any conversation. I've seen people who are cake bakers and they are decorating a cake and talking about what's happening in Palestine. Or they're saying, hey, I don't even know how to approach this. This isn't my normal content. However, I'm severely distressed that this is something that's going on and I want to publicly say free Palestine. Or they decorate a cake that says free Palestine on it, you know? Like, you can involve it in anything. So by saying this is my lane, this is also demonstrating this is not my problem, which is a clear show of privilege. And, you know, we say the word white privilege a lot, which it absolutely could be a designator of, but I like Western privilege is, I think, a better way to say it. And I'm not taking away from like anything that white people specifically need to do. Like, there's a whole, like, I'm very interested in that conversation and decolonization in general. If you're growing up in Western school systems, it teaches you colonism. It teaches you how to operate as a colonizer. So anyone who is having that sort of teaching from kindergarten to high school, kindergarten to middle school at minimum, you know, 10 years of your life minimum, that's going to bring a certain way of thinking into your mind that is privileged and that is separate from the rest of the world, from the part of the world that doesn't have as much privilege as Westerners do, right? So saying it's not my lane is also saying it's not my problem in many cases, perhaps not all, but the third branch of this, we could say, is saying it's not my problem. And that's a display of privilege, saying that you actually don't care, which that's a choice. We don't have to care about every single issue. However, you know, what's going on in Gaza is not some small issue. So before I continue to go on a rant about this one, this is really about victim consciousness and disconnection from the real world. And the thing is about America, we are completely separated from the rest of the world. Most people who travel from other countries come and say that. They say that Americans are so shut out purposely from the rest of the world, because if we saw our impact on the rest of the world, we would revolt. And that's what's happening right now, right? So by saying it's not my lane, saying I am actively not going to participate in this conversation, it is displaying a certain unawareness about your impact on the entire world. And this is offering a huge opportunity for awakening. This is another one. I've said this before. Oh, that's just not, you know, I actually probably said this sort of in 2020. I was dating someone. I was in a situationship with someone who really encouraged me to talk about Black Lives Matter. And I was like, I want to, I'm just really afraid of that I'm going to say the wrong thing. I don't feel like this is necessarily, I would never say like, this isn't my problem. Perfect example. Like, I wasn't consciously like, this isn't my problem, but also I was like, I just feel like my gifting is better suited for a different area, right? Privilege. That is a form of privilege. So it doesn't mean you're a horrible person. However, it just means that you are separated from a certain group of people's plight, from a certain group of people's pain. And it is offering us a huge widening in our perspective that's likely going to be very painful. You know, when we start to see the impact that we are having as Westerners on the rest of the world, it is heart shattering. And it also feels like a huge betrayal because It's like our government and our systems have lied to us about this from before for generations. And I would argue, as someone who teaches the ancient feminine, this has happened for thousands of years from the origin of the patriarchal times. So it's really nothing new. You're in for a big surprise, right? You're in for a big awakening, though. And again, this is a huge recovery of our power. So if this is a trauma response, you can look at where am I not willing to feel pain potentially? Where else am I saying that this isn't my problem? Like somebody else's pain isn't my problem. The last trauma response I'm going to talk about in this particular moment is the group of people that I would call the news junkie or the neutrality side. This could be both. This could also be two separate trauma responses, but I see them showing up in the same way. So this could be the person who's following the news still, and is saying, it's horrible on both sides. I'm sending both sides love. They're taking a neutral approach to it. Or they're saying, well, they're doing this because they're looking, I'm not going to say the group's name because I don't want to get flagged on YouTube, but they're looking for this particular group because they're doing this because that group is there. They're hiding there. This trauma response, is one that a lot of us have like awoken to from 2012 to 2016. In 2016 was the Trump election, and a lot of us had a big awakening. And I'm not talking about politics. I don't hold any I don't care about politics, about like either party. Like I'm not close to associating with either of them. So I'm not talking about liking or not liking, because everyone will have different opinions who watches this, a certain party. However, in 2016, a lot of people woke up to the fact that the news might not necessarily be something to trust, with fact checking and with a certain censorship that started to come online, right? Whatever it is you think about that, some people awoke during that time frame that the news is not a trustworthy resource, and that the news is owned by big corporations that have an agenda, right? And so essentially the news is another reality show that you're watching that is completely scripted, and has a desired outcome that they will get from the viewers other than just them watching it, right? So this group, if you are still believing what the news is telling you and you aren't doing your own sort of thinking, oh, not to mention like everything in 2020, we've had lots of moments where a lot of people have unplugged completely from the news, not seeing it as reliable in any source. So the groups of people who are still watching this if they're in a position, I'll say it this way. This is a trauma response that you are either going to stay rooted in for the rest of your life or for a long period of time until it continues to get even worse, or you're going to have a very harsh awakening. Because the thing is with this trauma response particularly, it's really difficult when we see how vulnerable we have been to programming. Everyone who has awakened has gone through this realization of like, wow, I have been so brainwashed, because we think that we're stronger than that. We think we could like not be brainwashed, but we are. We've been brainwashed for generations. This isn't a single group is brainwashed. All of us are brainwashed, right? And we're starting to unplug from that. So the initial unplug from that, the biggest programming, is painful, because we have to face the fact that, wow, I've been lied to for my entire life about all of these enormous events that I thought were real, that I thought were true. It's painful. There's rage involved. There's grief involved. There's trust, like the trust issues, right? Like we don't know who we can trust after something like that. So for this group, the first thing I would say is you need to get support from people who have already gone through it, because awakening to at this point would be harder than it was for the people who awakened in 2012, because so much has happened since that time frame. So for this group, if you're experiencing this trauma response, what you want to do, the growth opportunity here is for you to step into your bravery and be willing to see things from a different perspective. You don't even have to say like, you know what, everything that I've learned about the world is wrong. Like you don't have to go that far. You could just say like, I wonder if this is 100% true, and take it from there. This group, I feel, actually, there's a lot of people in my generation who are still in this group, but I feel like there's a lot of people in older generations who are in this group. So this is the last one I'm going to cover. I want to just say again, if there's a trauma response that I didn't mention, because there's lots of other things. There's lots of other responses people have had. I'm just kind of seeing these as being the most common. Put which one you fall under. I told you mine. I fall under the attacker, the criticism. I talk about this all the time in my training groups. Like, this is one of the shadow qualities that I've been working on for my whole life, because I've been raised in this sort of environment, right? Where that is the trauma response that people use as a coping mechanism. So what's yours? Put it in the comments. And if I didn't mention any that you want to have mentioned in this conversation, please put those in too. Like, let's hear them. And the last thing I'll say is I want to just reiterate, this is highlighting an opportunity of reclaiming more power for every single one of us. This, I think, is probably also a reason that this is happening. And I'm not saying that this is the reason why it's happening, but I think that this is one benefit, if you will, that we can at least get from it from a spiritual perspective, of being able to see ourselves in a fuller light, you know? And if you want any help with any of this conversation, if you're feeling called to doing more shadow work on yourself, if you're feeling called to even just coming into more alignment and more fulfillment with who you are being in the world, stepping into more of your power, this is my specialty. This is what I do with all of my clients, whether it's in Akashic record readings, looking at your soul blueprint, seeing what's going on in your world. You might have particular questions that we have your guides answer. These are life-changing sessions. And so there can be particular focuses, like I said, or we can just look at what's going on and what needs to happen in your field for you to be in more alignment. Profound. I also do packages of those, so you can save some money if you want to do multiple of them. You can use them for up to a year. But I also do mentorship. And I just feel like there's some people who I haven't worked with before that are being pulled into this field. So if you feel called to my energy, if you want my help in becoming more in your own alignment and your own highest potential and power based on your unique soul blueprint, not as a mimicked copy of someone else, but from your unique soul blueprint, you can email me, you can go to my website, you can message me on Instagram at ali.wilkins. And talk to me about what mentorship looks like, and we'll see if it's a good fit for you. Or you can just buy an Akashic Records package. You can go to my website, aliwilkins.com/Akashic Records. You can either book a single session or book a package. And yeah, that's it for today. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope it was supportive and helpful. Please share it. Please like the video and comment so that more people can see this. This is really important for people to address. With everything that is happening, this is a huge gem and opportunity that we don't want to miss. So please share it so more people can see it and more people can find it. I have a relatively small audience here, and I want more people to be able to see it and benefit from this content. So yeah, and share it if you feel called. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next week on whatever video I do then. Have a beautiful rest of your week, and free Palestine.